Now, let's try to click new, then new project. And for this one, uh, let me name this one as demo employee project. Okay, by the way, the categories you have to use Java, and this is for Java application. Click on next. The name of the project is demo employee, and it will automatically create the main class named demo employee. Okay, then finish. So this is our main class with a main method. Okay, so upon running this program, the content in our main method will be executed. But for our employee, we have to create a class employee. So create a class. Okay, inside the package, right click, new, then Java class for our employee. Finish. Okay, the class employee must be placed within the same method of our main, okay, or the same package. Then here, for our class employee, we have to identify the data fields. For the fields, we will be using the private access specifier, di ba? Okay. For the emp num, it is of type integer. So we can assign integer values for our emp num. Another field is the last name. The last name string data type will be used. Okay? And then the first name. And then the salary. Okay? Have to correct the syntax. The salary is of private access specifier also. The salary is of type double. Okay. Now, after some specifying the fields, we have to create a default constructor. For the default constructor, the public access specifier will be used, and this is a method with the same name of the class employee. Okay? And what are we going to do here is to set these field names to its default values. For example, the default values of empnum. Default values of empnum is 0, for example. The last name is equal to empty string, or if you want, if for example, um, the problem specifying the default values for the constructors, you have to specify it here. Okay? In this case, we have the empty string. Then the last name, I mean the first name, is the empty string. And the default salary is, for example, the default salary, what's the minimum wage? For example, 405, for example, for the regular employee. All right. So again, we can override our, we can overload our constructor. That is, create a constructor with parameters public employee. Okay. And here, for the parameters, specify the emp num. Okay. Then here, by the way, you have to enumerate here emp last name. Next, the first name. Okay. And then the last one is the salary. And here, we're going to set the values from the parameters to these fields. Since we are using the same parameter name in for our instance variables, we have to use this reference. Okay, so this dot empnum. Okay, that's the advantage of having the advanced IDE, because there is an IntelliSense. Okay, it will automatically suggest upon typing the first few letters. Okay, that is from the value of the formal parameters. Okay, it will be assigned to our instance variables empnum. So this reference is used since we are using the same variable name in our local parameter to our instance variables. And next, this dot emp last name is equal to emp last name. Okay, for example, if you do not like to use this reference for this, you can just use any variables. Okay, you can use any variable names na dili parehas sa ato ang field names. Like, for example, removing emp bakaha. Okay, this dot emp first name is equal to emp first name. Then this dot salary is equal to salary. Okay, so this will be used, for example, upon setting the values for our instance variables during creating the instance for the employee. Right? Now, after the constructors, is you are going to list down the getters and setters for each of these fields. Now, first is the getter for the empnum. For the getter, public modifier will be used. The return type of empnum is integer. So, int return type. Convenient keyword for the getter is get, then the name of the field. Okay? So this will just return the value of empnum. Next is the setter for the empnum. For the setter, we will be using the void type of the method. For the setter, convenient keyword set will be used, followed by the field name, emp num. And here, since we are going to set the value for emp num, we have to specify a parameter for the setter method. The value of the data type of the value being used to set this emp num is an integer. Therefore, this will receive the value of type integer. Again, I am using the same name of our variable name, so this reference will be used. This dot emp num is equal to emp num. That is getting the value being passed here and assign it to the field emp num. Next, after the getter and setter for the emp num is the getter and setter for the last name. For the getter for the last name, okay, for the last name, the data type of the value being returned is of type string. Therefore, the string return type will be used. Get emp last name. And here, return emp last name. Okay? And the setter for the emp last name, void will be used. Void set emp last name. Okay? Okay, return salary. Then, setter for the salary. Okay. Setter for the salary. So, set salary. So, we need the parameter that will receive the type of double for the salary. So, this will set the value for our field salary. Okay, this dot salary is equal to, all right. Now, okay, try to evaluate the created class. We have already the field names, the constructor, the default constructor. We are overloading the constructors, a default constructor and the constructor with parameters. The getters and setters for each of the fields. Okay, so complete. Now, in the client class, okay, we can create an object for our class employee. So to create an object, we have the class name, employee. Say for example, we'll be using um, driver. Okay, first instance is the driver is equal to new. So the new operator will be used to create a concrete instance of employee. So driver, new employee. Okay, and this object will be used to access the public members of employee, like the getters and setters. Okay, as well as the constructors. So driver, okay, so for the driver, we can now set the first name, last name, employee number, and salary. For example, we're going to set the first name. I mean the employee number first. Employee number for the arguments here, again, just like passing any values for the arguments for the method calls, okay, can be a static, um, static values or dynamic values. Dynamic meaning coming from the user's input. For the user's input, for example, you can use the class scanner and the GUI or the employee dialog box for setting the values for each of the data members. Okay, for example, in my demonstration, I will be using the static values like empnum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And for the first name and last name, so driver dot set last name. Okay, for the last name, for example, I have here Rizal. Then the first name, for example, we have here Jose. Then the salary, set salary. For example, the salary is 500 pesos per day. Now, we can get the information of this driver through the getters. Okay? For the getters, like for this driver, we have emp number, okay? Or it's up to you on how will you format the result. Okay? Employee number. Uh-huh. So for getting the employee number, we can use the get method. Okay? So using the object driver that get emp number. Then here, okay, I will just use the new line for this. Okay. For the new line, this is for the last name. Last name. So driver dot get last name to be followed by a space. Then okay, last name we must have a comma here. Then here driver dot first name. Okay. So we'll just remove this one. Instead of last name, we will have the name in a format of last name and first name. So driver dot get first name. Then the salary. Okay. In a new line, we'll have the salary. Okay, followed by the value of the salary using the object named driver dot get salary. Okay. Right. So say, for example, we're going to run this one. Let's try to run. Save all, then run. Okay. Now we have here the first instance for our employee with an employee number named Rizal Jose and the salary is 500. Okay? Now, for example, um, you're going to incorporate the output within the class employee. Okay. So you will just add another method here for the output. Say, for example, public void display, meaning we're going to display the info of each employee. Okay. Now, we will be using the output here. So instead of specifying the output here, in which individual method of call for getters will be used. So here, okay, so here we'll be displaying the employee info. Okay, for the employee info, right? For the employee info, we will be adding it here. ID number. ID number. Then here, we will be getting. Just emp num. Then next is we have the name. Okay, name, get last name. Okay, by the way, this will be placed in a new line. This will be placed in a new line also. This will be placed in a new line. Next, after the last name, we have to display the first name. So get first name. So we're just calling oops, get first name, get last name. Okay. Okay, that is why we have a red flag here because there is no such method get last name. Okay, but get emp last name, get emp first name. Okay. Mhm. Then the salary in a new line. Okay, get salary. Okay, now instead of having individual employee in the main method or in the client class, we will just use this display method here. Okay, so for the display method, we will just use the object driver dot display. Save. So since we have the system .out.println to display this info of the driver, and another method call, or another method call for displaying the infos of the driver. So it's expected there are two outputs, or there are two displays. Let's try to run. Now, the first one is the result of this statement, and the second one is the result of this statement, driver.display method call. All right. So for example, you'll be creating another instance like um, manager, employee, manager is equal to new employee. Okay, must be in a small m. So this manager will be used to access the public members of the employee. Okay, like the get and set methods. Then here, for example, we will be using the constructors of the employee. Okay, for example, using the manager the display. Okay, what should be the output? Okay, let's try to examine. We have we have the method call display for the driver object. Let's try to run. So it displays a default info of the employee. That is the default data specified in the default constructor. But if you are to specify or to set the values for the employee, like passing the empnum, last name, first name, and salary, so we will be using this constructor with parameters. That is 1111. Okay, for example, then this is Bonifacio. And the third parameter is Andres. And for example, 600. And this is for the employee ID number, last name, first name, and the salary. Save, and let's try to run it. So it's expected that these values are passed for the manager. Let's try to run. So we have now the result. Okay, the first one is for the driver. Then the second one is driver display. And this is the result of manager.display. So we have Bonifacio Andres with salary and ID number.